Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my new series, Gen 3 OU Archetypes. In this series, I'm going to break down and describe the core ideas behind many common team structures that you see in high-level competitive Gen 3 OU. Thank you to DkKoba, a Tier 3 patron, for this video suggestion. Take a look at my Patreon link in the description if you'd like to suggest a Pokemon-related topic for me to cover in a video. Today we're going to talk about the most central archetype in competitive Gen 3 OU, TSS, which is an acronym that stands for Toxic, Spikes, and Sand. This team style has always and will always be viable, and I'd recommend this style to any new player who wants to understand the fundamentals of this format, as TSS teams are built around the most powerful and central concepts in the metagame. The game plan of these teams are quite simple. Create spikes, create permanent sand with Tyranitar, and start applying pressure to the enemy, forcing them to switch. Spikes force the enemy to take damage every time they make a switch, unless they're a flying type or they have the ability Levitate. Sandstorm deals chip damage every turn to all Pokemon that aren't rock, ground, or steel type. This deadly combo punishes the enemy for making defensive switches, because every time they do, they're taking significant chip damage from the spikes, and because of the Sandstorm, they lose their ability to heal with leftovers. Pokemon that are immune to spikes are obviously popular in this metagame as a way to combat this strategy. Toxic is an excellent way to punish many of these Pokemon and put them on a clock as well, gradually eliminating them over time. The most classic examples of TSS teams are built around a combination of Pokemon known as the Big Five. The Big Five are Skarmory, Blissey, Tyranitar, Gengar, and Swampert. Skarmory is not only an excellent spikes user, but with its fantastic defensive typing and immunity to sand and spikes itself, it's also a physical wall that deals with a lot of popular threats in the metagame very well, such as Metagross and Snorlax. Sometimes a Skarmory simply creating spikes, using Raw and Toxic over and over, can almost win a game on its own with the chip damage. This Pokemon is notoriously difficult to kill, with its ability to protect and chip heal up repeatedly. Blissey is the premier special defense wall in the game, and adding it to your team gives you a safety net against almost all the special threats, notably Zapdos, Starmie, and Gengar. It also forces these Pokemon to switch out, since they can't 1v1 Blissey, which is very good for your Spikes game plan. With access to immediate healing and soft-boiled, and a vast move pool, with great status moves such as Toxic, Thunder Wave, and Sing, and even special attacks, commonly Ice Beam, Flamethrower, or Thunderbolt, Blissey is one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game and a key piece in the TSS game plan. Tyranitar is considered the strongest Pokemon in ADVOU. Permanent Sandstorm is the most definitive ability in the entire game, and it enhances the TSS game plan immensely. Denying chip heal from the enemy and making Spike's chips stick gets you closer to victory every time you force a switch. Not only does simply switching it in once and creating Sandstorm have a huge impact on the game, even if it does nothing, it's also a very powerful threat itself, with excellent offensive and defensive stats, and a vast array of moveset options. The classic Tyranitar is a Dragon Dance set, one of the few physical threats that can pose a threat to Skarmory with its powerful Rock Slide. Gengar is a natural addition to TSS teams. Rapid Spin is a move that removes spikes from your side of the field. Rapid Spin is a normal type move, which means ghost types are immune to it and can block it from taking effect. Gengar is the strongest ghost type in the game, is immune to spikes itself because of its Levitate ability, and it is also excellent at forcing the enemy to switch out, with its high special attack and vast coverage options. Not only that, Gengar has an excellent utility move pool as well. Will-O-Wisp is the most common option here, applying Burn, which not only cripples physical attackers by halving their damage, but also deals residual damage and denies leftovers healing from important enemy Pokemon. Taunt is a great tool as well, denying important walls like Blissey or Celebi from healing after taking spikes and sand chip, further making your damage permanent. Explosion is another popular option on Gengar. In ADVOU, whenever you die, the enemy actually cannot act at all. If you use Explosion, you kill yourself, and the enemy can't heal the damage with Recover or Softbow. This, coupled with the fact that Explosion has 250 base power and also halves the enemy's defense stat when used, makes Explosion one of the strongest moves in ADVOU. Even Gengar, with its low base attack and a minus attack nature, gets a lot of value out of Explosion. It deals significant damage to Blissey and denies them from healing, which can be a great way to win a game. Swampert is an important defensive backbone for many teams. Adding Swampert to your team allows you to check all physical Tyranitar, Salamence, and Metagross sets, as well as checking Aerodactyl. Those are the 4 most powerful and popular physical threats in the game, all checked and forced out by a single Pokemon. Water-Ground typing is one of the best type combinations in the entire format, only having one weakness, Grass. Immunity to Sand also makes it great at chip healing with Leftovers and Protect. The classic Swampert set is a physically defensive set with Hydro Pump, Earthquake, Ice Beam, and Protect. Stab Hydro Pump forces out Tyranitar and is generally difficult to switch into. Earthquake is a more accurate move that 2-hits most Tyranitars and does good physical damage to a lot of things. Ice Beam lets you check Salamence with a super effective hit that often 1-hit kills it. Swampert also has great utility options. Roar helps as a way to force out things like a sleeping Suicune or other boost sweepers, and also punish something like a Celebi attempting to come in and take advantage of Swampert, forcing Spikes damage onto it. Toxic is obviously a great option, synergizing with your Spikes and Sand to deal residual damage. These 5 Pokemon make a very powerful synergistic core. You can use these 5 Pokemon with a lot of different things in the last slot. Starmie is the most classic option, as it is a fast, special offensive threat with excellent coverage, outspeeding most things in the game and forcing them out, accentuating your Spikes plan. It also has access to Rapid Spin itself, giving you a great option against enemy Spikers. And the combination of Rapid Spin and also the ability to outspeed and directly threaten Gengar, the most popular Rapid Spin blocker, is very powerful. There's a bit of a mind game every time Starmie's in. They have to decide if they want to go Gengar on a potential Rapid Spin, or go to a wall like Blissey against a special attack. If they make the wrong move, they're in a lot of trouble. Some other popular options in this last slot are Zapdos and Aerodactyl. Zapdos is immune to Spikes and an extremely powerful offensive threat. It has access to Baton Pass, which allows it to pivot and react accordingly to whatever the enemy does. A common scenario would be a Zapdos forcing out a Skarmory. They switch to Blissey, they take Spikes damage, and then you Baton Pass to your Tyranitar, threatening their Blissey with your physical threat. You just won this exchange because of the Spikes chip that just happened to Blissey, and now you're forcing them out again, probably to a Swampert that's going to take even further Spikes damage. Aerodactyl is in the fastest relevant speed tier in ADVOU, tied with Jolteon at 394 max speed. With a Choice Band, a great physical move pool, and immunity to Spikes and Sand, Aerodactyl is an incredible offensive threat when Spikes are down. It can force switches like nothing else. It's a bit prediction reliant, since with Choice Band, you're forced to lock into something potentially disadvantageous if you make the wrong call. But Aerodactyl is certainly one of the most threatening Pokemon in the game and one of the most popular Spikes abusers. This archetype is not necessarily restricted to just the big 5, of course. An alternative Spiker that can be used is Forretress. Forretress has an excellent Bug and Steel typing, with its only weakness being to Fire. It has access to Spikes, Rapid Spin, and Explosion, 3 of the best moves in the game. In its 4th move slot, it can run a lot of different things. Earthquake is popular to be able to kill Magneton and prevent getting trapped. Hidden Power Bug is a solid stab option that deals a lot of damage to the 2 most popular Rapid Spinners, Claydol and Starmie. Forretress is not as popular as Skarmory because it requires a bit more support, usually in the form of a Pursuit Tyranitar, eliminating Gengar, allowing it to Rapid Spin and explode safely. If you want to play TSS at a slower pace, Swampert and Gengar aren't strictly necessary either. Physical threats like Tyranitar and Aerodactyl can be handled elsewhere with Pokemon such as Dugtrio or Metagross. Rather than your plan hinging on spin blocking and keeping your Spikes on the field at all costs, Gengar can be replaced with something more defensively solid, such as Claydol. The plan can then be to apply pressure to their spinner and eliminate them over a longer period of time in order to eventually establish your spikes. Although TSS is the most popular and probably most consistent team archetype in the game, it's not without its weaknesses. Naturally, the most popular team style and most popular combinations of Pokemon are going to have a huge target on their back, with many team styles built around punishing popular TSS cores. Magneton is a Pokemon that aims to trap and eliminate Skarmory and Forretress. Magneton can be used alongside rapid spinners such as Claydol or Starmie, so that after they eliminate your Spiker, they remove your spikes and your entire game plan is ruined. Magneton can also be used alongside physical threats. Once Skarmory, your main physical wall, is removed, suddenly you are a lot more threatened by something like a Dragon Dance Salamence or a Metagross. Magneton can be difficult to deal with. My advice would be to try and guess whether or not the enemy team is using a Magneton based on their team structure. If they have a lot of physical threats, like Salamence, Metagross, Gyarados, etc., you can assume they probably need a Magneton for support. If they have something like a Snorlax and Claydol, a Magneton would be logical on their team to enable these teammates. If you think a Magneton is coming in, you can Roar, or double switch to something that 1v1s Magneton, like a Blissey. In some situations, Skarmory doesn't mind dying to Magneton. Skarmory can usually make 1 or 2 spikes in the process of being trapped, and upon dying, switch into a strong offensive threat that forces them out, such as Moltres. In this situation, you still have momentum and are still applying pressure with your spikes. If you play smart with your Gengar, deny their rapid spin, and keep the pressure up, you can still win the game despite losing your Skarmory. Some players like to run Dugtrio alongside Skarmory. If you suspect they have a Magneton, a double switch Dugtrio is the best possible way to punish this, completely eliminating their Magneton and allowing your Skarmory to freely wall and make spikes against their probably very Skarmory weak team. This is a riskier plan, but it can be very strong. If they're running Magneton alongside physical threats and successfully eliminate your Skarmory, you can still win as well. Swampert checks most physical threats, Gengar can be a backup check to Pokemon such as Salamence and Gyarados, and even Blissey can check Salamence, living a +1 hit and eliminating with Ice Beam. If you play smart with your remaining defensive Pokemon, you can still be victorious against a physical offense plan. Another weakness that TSS teams can have is a vulnerability to mixed attackers. If you're using the classic Skarmory, Blissey, and Swampert core, a mixed attacker with fire, fighting, and grass coverage, such as Tyranitar or Salamence, can be extremely hard to deal with. Playing around mixed threats can require some risky guesswork. Gengar can pivot safely into a mixed Salamence Brick Break and force them out with Ice Punch. Blissey can also afford to take the 40 or so % from a Salamence Brick Break to eliminate with Ice Beam. Starmie can come in on a mixed Tyranitar Brick Break and force them out with a Hydro Pump. If you're using Dugtrio, you can eliminate a mixed Tyranitar with that. You can come in on Brick Break, or come in after sacrificing something else, safely letting Dugtrio in to eliminate the Tyranitar. Zapdos is a solid switch in against a Hidden Power Grass. With a modest nature, you can 2-hit kill a mixed Tyranitar most of the time, tanking 1 Ice Beam in the process. Against Salamence, you do a lot to them with Thunderbolt, and they don't do much to you with Dragon Claw. Charizard is another mixed threat that can be hard to handle. Starmie and Zapdos can help, and Blissey can sometimes play around Beat Up and Focus Punch in order to 1v1 Charizard. Mixed threats definitely make your life a bit harder on a TSS team. They can threaten your key defensive walls and sometimes bring your momentum to a halt, and with 1 or 2 correct predictions, completely destroy your defensive core. However, with some proactive switches on your part and a little bit of gaming, you do have the tools to handle these mixed threats. Check out the description for some examples of TSS teams. Like I said earlier, I would recommend this team style to anyone starting out in this metagame. You often see the same Pokemon used on these kinds of teams, but each of these Pokemon can be run in very different ways, especially Tyranitar and Gengar, which have a huge amount of variety in sets and options. This makes TSS a great team style when starting out with team building. You can focus more on small tweaks and optimizations, rather than which Pokemon you're using on your team, and harder ideas like building a defensive core from scratch that can handle all the threats in the metagame. The Big Five are a tried and true combo of Pokemon that can handle just about everything, but they also have enough variety among their movesets to be tweaked to your own playstyle and pace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy informative Gen 3 OU content like this, I'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe and like buttons. I primarily play Gen 3 OU, and I have a lot of laddering videos, tournament prep and analysis videos, and also commentary on my channel. If you're a new player and want some help getting into the format, feel free to join my Discord, linked in the description, and ask me or other community members anything about Gen 3 OU.
The money got different, cause of what I'm spending. The money got different,
oh, it's
cause of what I'm
Magneton!
spending.
Whoa,
The money
KO'd
got
by one
different,
hit! It
cause
scattered
of what I'm
spikes!
spending. The money got different, cause of what I'm spending.